why I'm in this space, why it matters so much to me, is because it allows people to do something that otherwise they would not have the opportunity to do. Going to, getting a computer science degree is expensive. Going to coding boot camps is expensive. Learning to code, even, if you go through, can be a long process, and that assumes that you have access to a lot of platforms. And I think that this allows people to start with an idea that, I think our community members are going to be, tomorrow's developers, because they are able to see that the problems that exist in their community, they can become problem solvers.
Welcome to The Future is No Code. My name's David. I'm pleased and honored to be joined by the crew from Visual Dev FM, Visual Development Developers Podcast. We're really excited to have you all. We have Lacey, Ben, and Matt. Welcome, everybody.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. We're honored to be here.
Very
awesome.
Much so.
Well, we are huge fans here at Adalo of your guys' podcast. I try to listen to. I love the weekly roundups. Love that's a quick listen win for everybody. So you should definitely do that every week at the very least, and then go into a lot more content. Always feels great to get the pulse from everybody else, and you also have some of the guests that we've had on this program as well. All right, let's get things started here. So. Just a quick format for everybody. This is the first time if you're listening. So we have a little intro section, trying to figure out how to define the space. We start talking about how this affects everybody, roles, organizations. And then finally a little predictions where I'll try to hold everybody accountable to give me some approximate dates. It's probably the toughest part. And that way we can compare and contrast everything at the end. All right, so let's get this ball rolling. So when did you get into no code? And, and then I guess, how did you guys come to forming the Visual Dev FM podcast?
Sure. So I got into no code kind of by accident. I started out in traditional software development, and about 18 months in, realized that this is not what I want to be doing. I loved code. So through a series of just kind of some random events, I was stuck on a bug issue, and I was trying to figure it out. So I went to YouTube, to try and see a tutorial, figure out what I'm doing wrong. And an ad for Webflow goes across, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I checked it out, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been looking for. This is how I want to create. And having the back end knowledge of code was really helpful, but just to be able to build things visually as I see them was a total game changer for me. And how let Ben or Matt get into them on the podcast. I was doing a project called No Code Creators, which was kind of like doing tutorials of helping people understand how to use these tools. And then Ben and Matt reached out to me to come on to the podcast. And so it just kind of made sense to put everything under one roof.
Awesome.
So how did I get into no code? Wow. Yeah, so I have a background that was in creating with code, and started just making my own sites, HTML, CSS, and then really got into WordPress and developing custom WordPress themes. And I started working in a project where I had limited resources, and I was trying to build a lot of sites, and I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. This is so tough. And I found Macaw. And then Envision bought it, I think, and shut it down. And so then I found Webflow, and I was like, oh, sweet, let's give this a go. But I guess thinking on it, my really first experience, because I thought about it, I think the first time I saw a site builder, it was GeoCities, Yahoo GeoCities. And if you're old enough to know what that is, you might be chuckling about it. So.
Yeah. So I got into no code. I guess it depends on how you define no code, which is kind of the point of the series. But yeah, I got into no code, I guess, in high school. So like I got into web design by learning Weebly in my fundamentals of technology class. And I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Joe Gebbie of Airbnb put it like really well. He was like, it's so crazy that I can like, design something on the web and then like publish it, and anyone anywhere in the world can access it. And so like, as I got deeper into the space, I mean, I didn't really know it as no code. But as I got deeper in, I took it on a level, and my next level from Weebly was, going to Squarespace. And so, I started an agency right out of high school called Webster Piece. And essentially right now what we specialize in is no code software builds and e-commerce projects. But, so for a few years I worked in Squarespace. And after that I was like, I want to take this another step further. And like, I don't like the way like I have to customize things now. It's just not very intuitive, not very cool. And I had stumbled upon Webflow, and like I had found Ben here in the city. We both live in Oklahoma City, near each other. And we got coffee for like one time, and he just accepted a job with Webflow on their support team. And he was like, super generous. Ben is still to this day one of the nicest people I know, and he was just like, he taught me everything I know about Webflow, and that just got me hooked, and that's what led me down this path of no code. And so Visual Dev FM, it was originally formed around an idea that Ben and I get coffee every Friday just to talk like no code, and just like nerd out. And it just started from like us being like, we should like the most basic thought ever, we should start a podcast about this. And so we did. And then we met Lacey, and the podcast got way better. So that's essentially the start.
Awesome. Well, awesome. All right. So I know we alluded to it a little bit in that first question, but what is your definition of no code?
Sure. So like, how would I explain it to someone?
Yeah. How would you explain to someone? And maybe like, it always works best sometimes to explain like what things you think are in no code and maybe what things you think are not in no code.
Sure. So when I'm explaining what no code is to someone, I talk about how I view it as like building blocks to create a project, a website, web app, or mobile app. And that in code, if you think of like high level abstractions, that you can kind of reduce down specific types of behavior, and then you can use them as like blocks to build with. And so you can visually see it out as you're building and see, how you want things to behave. So that's like a high level of how I explain it. As far as like what is and isn't no code, I think for me, what I consider no code products is that the intent behind the product is to enable all people to create for the web. So it's that, democratization of building software, of building websites, those sort of things. The things I probably don't consider no code are things that don't really give you a lot of control. So you just kind of can go in and you can change some text or some colors. I suppose you could argue it either way that is no code, but it doesn't allow you to have creative control over your project, control of the logic of your project. So I think those things have to be in play when you're kind of defining terms there.
Awesome.
So for me, I think when I think about no code, I guess my initial thought is, can you make something? Are you somebody who can make something, and could you do it on your own? Did you need to employ a developer? Did you have a product or idea, and were you able to pull it off without having to involve some technical genius or the 13-year-old down the street who knows like what they're doing, right? Like, could you do it yourself? And for me, it's like, if somebody comes up with an idea, if they have a product, if they have this website or this thing they want to create, and they can make it without involving somebody who's considered an expert, like if they can do it themselves, I consider that no code. And for me, it's like, did you build a super complex spreadsheet and make it public? I don't know, like I'll consider that no code. So there's a lot of things I guess I would consider no code, because if you didn't use code to build it, or even if you use some code to build it, but if you were able to pull it off and you didn't need to hire a developer to do it, I think that's the essence of the movement.
I think we might get to this in this interview series. I don't know if no code is a good name. If I describe it to people, I try to lean towards visual development. But that being said, I think what Lacey said, and what a lot of people are starting to adopt is like, honestly, the mission is democratizing software development. But like, I've had non-tech friends say like, all right, what the hell does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, that just sounds like tech jargon. And so then you have to like explain like, okay, it's almost like you're being able to build software using these drag and drop blocks. But like, when you say it like that, you almost reduce it down too much. They're like, oh, okay. So like you're dealing with like sprites and like, things like that. And it's like, so you have to find like kind of a middle ground. Kind of just how I do it is I kind of explain the logic behind, certain apps. And then I say, but we're able to do this without actually having to write the code ourselves. Someone else has written that for us. And we can just reuse that to our advantage. And, you get a lot of speed gains there.
Awesome. All right. So the space, and again, you're hinting at this before, maybe we don't always call it no code either. Maybe there's some better words that, we could kind of go that direction. At the moment though, everyone seems to be galvanized behind no code. So, but it wasn't always the case. So maybe like, it'll change over time, but when do you think the term came, like, when do you think it kind of started as like a no code movement? And do you actually have somebody who you would credit with that? That's an interesting question I have.
Yeah, that is an interesting question, a polarizing question too.
Yeah.
So when it started, I honestly don't know. And I was asked that before, and I should probably read up more on it. I know that this is not a new concept. I know that there have been advances in this for quite some time now. Looking back, it seems like to me that the drive wasn't behind it, and then the technology wasn't behind it either to actually bring it to where it is today. And who I would credit to that is kind of tricky, because I guess that goes back to, I've been in the space for about 18 months, and that's when I really started watching and learning. But from what I can tell, the original person who was doing no code before it was no code was Tara Reid. And I love that. And I love that she pioneered in that way. And she was, building apps together using Google Sheets and, Typeform and landing page. And that was before it was even called no code. So for me, that's who I look to and credit, saying that she was the first one out there actually doing it and selling the product that she had made with no code.
Awesome. Yeah. Another one of the guests that we talked to. So awesome.
Oh man, if I was going to put a name on it, I'll put names on it. Dan Bricklin and Bob Frankston, 1979, they built a tool. They built an app called VisiCalc for the Apple II, and it was the very first spreadsheet. And what they wanted to do was they wanted a calculator on steroids. And so I guess I would go back that far. I think that's when it's like, oh, hey, instead of being able to code or having to code, what could I do to make this happen? Just being able to input values and see the changes. So I would go way back like there. If I'm talking about like the essence of what it is today, I do think I think about those tools like GeoCities. And I mean, if you ever played with that, it was way before its time. And everything was terrible. I think it was absolute positioned and it was awful, but like you could literally take a design and translate it without having to write any code and output a site. And I remember being in college and having hundreds of friends who had like, did you check out my GeoCity site? And like, that was like a thing. And none of them knew anything about building for the web. So I don't know. That's just kind of what comes to mind when I think about like origins or the beginning of it. So
I don't have any names or dates ready off the dome like Ben does, but I think I think Excel. Excel is the first no code, low code visual development type app. There's so much power there. Like you can build, if you know how to do sheets, like, or know how to use Excel or Sheets or any tool like that, I think you can be very, very successful in no code in any industry really, because a lot of them just rely on it. In terms of now, or I guess in terms of web specifically, I would say maybe Dreamweaver for me. That was like, I don't know if that's like really the start. Probably GeoCities or something like that would technically be the start for the web. But I think Dreamweaver had a good concept. I don't know if the execution was/is done well by Dreamweaver, but I think they did a good job at it, because I feel like people they didn't call it no code back then, but it was no code by all counts. So yeah, I think those are my votes.
I think that
Awesome.
I think that front page should be involved there too. Like,
For
you know,
sure.
I mean, and I'll agree like 1,000%. I always feel like if you can master spreadsheets, then you can be like a no code genius
Right.
and ruler of
And
all
not like
empires.
a little like college, oh, I'm proficient in Excel, but like
Yeah.
I can't do like a simple VLOOKUP or something like that. Like really dig in. You can get really successful with it.
Awesome. All right. And then the last one in this intro section, there's a little bit of a, subconscious grammatical debate going on that I'd like us all to settle. Is it no space code or no dash code? What are our votes here today?
It is no dash code.
No
All
dash
right.
code.
No, I use just
Oh.
2 words, no code.
Do you really? That's actually
I do it-
that's the first time
I
I've
do
noticed
it-
that.
I do it because, well, it depends on who I'm speaking to, I guess. But most of the time, like if I'm online, I do hashtag no code, so it goes in no code Twitter. Makes more sense that way to do it as 2 words. But I guess the hyphen works if you're that kind of person, I guess.
If you're that kind of person, what does that mean? Jeez. Shots fired from Lacey.
Spit and fire. I love it.
We are officially forming sides to this. I will list all of the experts on one side and all the experts on the other side, and we can get together. All right, let's get into the meat of this. So really, I think what we're all seeing here is that this is going to have a big, huge impact on lots of different types of people, which I think is why everyone's so excited about this. Lots of different roles, organization, different paths of life. So we've grouped this into 4 different sections. We're going to start off with businesses. So how will what do you think this is going to mean for startups, entrepreneurs, for small businesses, and for enterprises?
Yeah, definitely. So to run through them relatively quickly so everyone can get through all 3. For entrepreneurs, I think that no code is an excellent way to validate, build your MVP. It is also a way to test out different platforms, different methodologies really quickly and start gaining feedback. You have a very short cycle that you can do that in with very low overhead cost. For small businesses, I think it's an invaluable tool to replace some of that overhead dev work that's going on that the devs probably don't even want to work on, and giving them control for their websites that they can control. They don't have to rely on, an outside agency or developers themselves. If they have that set up, like reworking their structure is also a great way to save time and money there. And then for enterprises, I think allowing people to have control on granular levels of the data that they work with, and that they're automating and running advanced computations on and need to form predictions and all of those things. The no code tools that we have allow for that, and you're not having to go through multiple steps or go through your IT department to get this sort of data and work through that. And so I think for all of them across the board, it's speed and power, and generally a lower cost when you look at the alternative solutions.
I think Lacey pretty much hit all the high points. I don't know. For me, it's about it's so funny. It's whether you're an entrepreneur, small businesses probably don't profess this as much, but they live it. In enterprise, I think it exists too. I think one of the core values you hear from companies all the time, core values, move fast, speed matters, like let's get things done. I think no code really makes that happen, because instead of having to like, I need access to an environment, I need a developer, I need an engineer, I need somebody, and then, before we can do that, we really need a designer to really kind of, at this point, we better bring a PM too, because now there's these resources. Like, there is none of that. It's just, let's just build, like, let's just go. And I think it is for entrepreneurs, it is validation for small businesses. It's about the circles to travel in. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had small business owners reach out to me and they're like, hey, where can I find a developer? And because it has never occurred to them, like, they've never lived in that. They don't even know where they would start to find a developer. And when they talk to somebody, the first price they hear is like this huge sticker shock. And they're like, I mean, I really just need to do this little thing. There's no in between for me. And I think this is just that power and that process and that place where they're enabled to really go and do things. And so, I think it's the same for enterprise. I mean, everybody dismisses that in a lot of ways, but when you look at bigger companies, they have these smaller teams that work inside them. And really, a lot of times their resources are limited, or they're like their own small business. They don't have their own resources to go do these things. So being able to kind of strike out and build a tool that they need specifically, and to get what they need is a big win. So.
Yeah, I think both of them hit, pretty much all the main points there. I would say, like, as an entrepreneur, a common problem that we saw years ago was, a lot of people saying like, hey, I've got this idea, but I don't have a technical co-founder. And now, like, you don't need a technical co-founder. Like, if you got the idea, like, you can be scrappy, and you can go build the idea yourself, whether it's on Webflow or Adalo or Bubble or whatever tool you want to use. Like, the resources are there. You just have to take some time, dig in and build the product. But I think that also comes into play, like, as an entrepreneur or as a business, as a small business, like, a lot of these people have limited funding. And, like, if you're an entrepreneur and, like, you're bootstrapping, you're not going to be able to hire a dev team unless you're related to someone very, very wealthy. And so I think, no code, just going back to that point, like, it democratizes software development. Like, you don't have to be rich and you don't have to, know how to code. You just have to, be willing to learn, be willing to put in the work. And you can build your MVP and you can do it really easily. And so I think it opens the doors for all these companies, especially enterprises. I think we're going to start seeing more enterprises come into the space more often. One thing that I like that Webflow is doing is they're starting to publish some of their case studies on the enterprise companies that are coming their way, like, I don't know how you pronounce it, Rakuten or something like that, SL, Super Logistics, moving all their stuff over. Like, it's interesting to see the insights, because, like, it translates to very real, very important data that gets improved by moving over to a no-code tool that you can manage yourself. And so, like in that article, I think they mentioned they saved $1,500 in just a couple of months. Page views are up, bounce rates are down. So being able to manage all that yourself is just so huge, and I think that's what we're going to see going forward.
Awesome. All right. So the second group here is more of like your traditional tech community. So specifically, what is this going to mean for designers, PMs, and developers? And then also, like, what is it going to mean, like, for, like, how are we going to, currently, like, everyone's like not using no code in that field, maybe up for like side hustle stuff for sure. But like specifically in that field, like, how are we going to transition? How is that going to transition in, and those sorts of things? That'd be kind of great to get those insights.
Yeah. Do you mean transition in as in, like, become part of the tools and software that they're using?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. How are they going to become part of their workflows, and, like, because you can't just like immediately you can't just like immediately switch from like, well, we're using code right now, like, you can't just switch everything overnight. I mean, you can for some parts of things, like your websites or those types of things, but yeah, specifically, how is that transition going to happen?
Yeah, so I think it's an incremental transition because when you have people that have been doing things a certain way for so long and that's just how they do it, we kind of tend to be creatures of habit and just kind of stick with what we know. And I think the more people that are branching out, they're building a simple web page, they're building a simple app, and they're able to see the power behind these tools and how quickly that they can build and iterate on these projects. Like if you have let's use a website for an example, a large website that you are trying to spin up, you're under a deadline, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be faster to use a no-code tool to build that website than it is to hand code it. And I think that we're getting to that point where that makes sense. It makes sense to, do things quicker. Why take longer when you can do something just as efficient and it saves you time? That's going to save, the company time. Everyone wins in that situation. And so that's kind of how I see it transitioning in. I do think that, there will be some, people that will transition in sooner. And I think it just depends on their mindset and what they are open to. For developers, I think that they should obviously welcome the no code movement with open arms, because this allows them to take the knowledge that they already know and kind of put it on steroids and just run even quicker with it. And for a designer to design something and then for them to also be in control of bringing that to life, that they can take their mock-ups and their wireframes and everything and then go and build that out. I think having that amount of power and control is going to really help bring those projects to life. And the same with your PMs. My background is before I got into software development, I was a product manager, and I can't tell you how many times I sketch things out and we'd go to the customers and we're doing this feedback, and it's like I wish I could just show them something or build something for them without having to pull in the developer. And now you can. And so that's going to allow you to get to your customers quicker. That's going to allow you to get feedback quicker. So I think it's going to trickle in. I think we need people to continue pushing in this space and talking about it and sharing. And it's inevitable. So.
Yeah, I guess for me, I think this really depends on leadership space to space. I think obviously there are a lot of people who don't believe in no code. Like they're not buying the movement, and they don't like it, and they don't want any of it. And there are definitely people who do. And I think that, those places that can see the value, like it's so funny working Webflow customer support. I hear from, like, whether it's through the support system that we use, or even like people who DM me on Twitter who are, or hit me up on a forum that I'm a part of or in a Slack community, and they're like, hey, I'm a developer. I just wanted you to know I found Webflow, and oh my gosh, like what it's done for me. Like instead of having to spend all this time working on micro interactions, like I can actually jump back to what's happening on the back end and spend more time there and really, really focus on the full stack of what that looks like. I think there are a lot of developers who see the advantage there, and there are a lot of companies who see that. And I think I hear this all the time, like, hey, I'm gonna move my website over to this no code tool because now it means my marketing team can run it and I can free my developers up. Like they're not like we can build our product and we're not wasting our time on this. And so I think there's just so many advantages there. And I do think that there is a tedium in some of that. And there are probably some developers who don't like it too, because I think if you talk to developers, sometimes they're like, I work in this really focused space where I'm writing this JavaScript all day long or this React all day long. I'm writing all of this all day long. And sometimes I want a problem to solve, and hearing from the marketing team was always fun. So maybe we are taking some of those advantages out of their hands because that was like a fun break. But I don't know. Like I think that they will embrace it, and I think it's the same for designers and PMs for those who have who grasp those tools and can really build things up, to say like, hey, for a designer to not just show you a Figma sketch, but to actually show you, look at what this micro interaction looks like, or look what look how this flows. Like you can actually click through this app and go through the whole app flow. I know it's not going to look the same, and we're going to, XYZ with our own piece, but to be able to actually have that and put it into people's hands and to talk about what that looks like, how it feels, what that experience is like, and where those, before we spend all of this time and effort, and let's face it, like a lot of money within this engineering power, doing these things, let's make sure that this works. Like, hey, we got this prototype in our hand. We realize this just doesn't make sense. Like, okay, before we get too far down the road, let's back up just a little bit and look at this again. So I just think it is going to help people all around, developers, designers, PMs. I think it plays a really big role. I can already see it doing that, and I think it's only going to continue to do those sorts of things.
Yeah, I mean, both of them are dead on. I think the buy-in part, to answer your buy-in question, I think it might be slower than we want, but as we see more and more no-code projects come to the marketplace, people are going to look at them and be like, you built that in no-code? And like to me, it's like the stakeholders, what they care about is results, performance, cost. Like that's what matters to them. And if no-code can get you there way quicker, way better, way cheaper than the other alternative, I can't see why anyone would say, no, we're not going to adopt that this time. We're not going to go that way. And so I think we'll see mass adoption even more so than what we see now. But I think it'll take some time. On the developer side of things, that's an interesting question. I recently talked to a developer who was like, he's like in the mix to be like an engineer who was in the weeds. He built BuzzFeed's first mobile app. He led engineering at Disney, and he led engineering Capital One, worked at engineering Capital One. And so like he listens to the podcast, and when we were talking on the phone, he was like, I asked him point blank, I was like, so like I see a lot of pushback with the developers, but you seem to like openly accept no code tools as like, this is like the new wave. And he was like, honestly, the way I see it is this is just another tool in my tool belt for getting things done. And at the end of the day, like with my teams, like I want to be able to just get stuff done. And so like, I think we will start to see more developers adopting that mindset. I think now developers versus traditional developers versus no-code developers is a little bit divisive, but I think we'll start to see that merge soon enough. And same with, I mean, Ben hit the points on designers and PMs really well. I think with designers, like being able to just take my design in Figma and not have to worry about any sort of miscommunication with the developer and getting it into my website or web app, I think that's money. And if I'm I guess it's your next question, but I just won't be able to tackle the whole spectrum myself.
Yeah. So to get to that next question. All right. So the next group is consulting. So this will be everyone from, what is this going to mean for maybe traditional dev shops, for freelancers and agencies? And then also like, what is this going to mean for non-dev consultants, maybe your traditional the big consulting firms that are out there, and all that stuff.
Yeah. I think it's going to kind of like how it's going to slowly build with developers, designers. I think we're going to kind of see the same thing with dev shops, simply because the code is so ingrained there, and that's what they, live and breathe and are constantly turning out. I do think there will be some tools that will excel there quicker than others, like your automation tools. I could see those excelling at a higher rate than maybe your building tools. For freelancers and agencies, I think it's already starting to happen because people are seeing how quickly you can spin up a website, an app, a web app. And, if you simply keep it at like, here's the value that you're providing, your costs can still stay the same, even though you're able to do it quicker. So I do think that that's something that's already here, or we're just like on the cusp of. I have a lot of freelance people in my circle and some agencies, and they're all in on no code and how it's changed and built their business. I know that Matt uses no code a lot in Webster Piece, and so he will definitely be a great one to speak into that. And for your non-dev consultants, I think it's going to be about the same route. I think there's going to have to be a lot of testing and proving so that they can, then go out and recommend and push this. So I think for some we're close, and for some we still have a little bit of ways to go.
I think this is where, I think for dev shops, I don't know, this is where still to me, the no code space feels still a little immature. It's hard for you to pick up a product and build something and then take it and put it into your typical workflow that a developer is using. So for dev shops, I just don't know. I still think that's where there's like a lot of room to grow, and where no code tools are going to figure that out. And I think that's going to come in partnership with some of the bigger dev shops as they start to adopt some of the tools. And I guess the adoption to me looks like it's the projects they want to pick up because it's extra money, but it's like, okay, this shouldn't take this much time and we shouldn't have to devote this X amount of resources to it. So, hey, let's no code this and just like get it out of the way. And like, Webflow plus X or Adalo, or like I can, whatever, and I can make this thing happen, and we can be done with it, and client's going to be happy, and we can focus on this other thing. I think, I see it that way. And I also think there's always enterprising and innovative minds that are going to go, okay, now how can we work this into our typical flow that we're building with our, like, how can I take this code that Webflow exports and then make it like, how can I put this in my React environment? And then, or how can I take this Glide app, or how can I take, I think there's just all these different pieces. Like, how are they going to be able to take those things and then turn around and use them? I think that'll be the fun part. So I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing how people do those things and what it changes in the no code products themselves in order to make those groups more powerful. Because I mean, the truth is a lot of the no code businesses, even though they're bigger, they're still, younger and new. And, if larger dev shops come to you and they want to figure out how to partner like that, that's something you're going to listen to, right? So yeah. I don't know. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. But freelancers and agencies, I think it's money in the bank. Like, okay, like I can hire a developer, or can I do this with some talent I have in-house, charge the same amount of money, because they don't know how I made it. And then guess what? My return just went way up, and I moved really quickly, and they're going to love me. And I made it easier. Typically with a no-code tool, I don't have to go bring a developer in every month and then wait 3 weeks for a change. Like, we can just be like, oh, you want to do what? Okay, yeah, well, hey, go ahead and refresh. That's changed. Like, that's really easy, I think, for people to do. So I think that's big. And I think it's the same for non-dev consultants. I think for non-dev consultants, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this is my time to shine, right? Like, I don't develop. But like, oh, you want your business to be able to make these 4 tools talk together? Great. Like, I'm your person for that. I can make that happen. And I think I think for those two, it's already a win. And I think you see more non-dev consultants and more freelance people buy into it because of the power it brings. And I know a lot of people wouldn't consider this, but like, I think even Squarespace and Shopify, you call those because, I mean, people use those and they have whole business models built around them because they don't have to code and they can turn things around quickly. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, okay, so for dev shops, how I would envision this, and this might be a hot take, but I would say, like, if you're like a top dev shop, no. I'm not going to say anything bad. Relax. I think dev shops will start to hire like a no-code specialist into their team to take some of these projects on that they're getting, like that. Like, it might not be enough to like really take it on. Like, these dev shops might have a minimum budget of, $100K, $250K, something like that. But someone comes to me and they're like, hey, I've got a budget of $50K. Can you build this client dashboard for me? And it's like, yeah, like if we had a no-code developer and they could just knock it out, like, that's a great, healthy profit margin. So I think we might see that with dev shops going forward. The ones that I think are going to keep adopting and new technologies and adapting to, the changing tech scene. But I think, I can speak on the agencies and freelancers part. Like, to me, the whole thing here with these 3 groups is like, you get a bigger piece of the pie. you know, like you don't have to outsource. You can handle it yourself. And I know with us, like when you're building a Squarespace website, it's like you kind of have a cap on like what you can price your work at, because there's only so much you can do. Squarespace is cool. But like you can't, it's a lot harder to build a web app in Squarespace than it is in Webflow. And like with Webflow, I mean, like we've worked on it. Ben and I have worked on, you know, interesting, where it's just like, you know, you wouldn't even be able to tell that it was built in a no-code app, but it allows for way bigger margins. We can charge more, and we can turn things around really quickly. And like that comes in super handy whenever, you know, for example, Ben and I worked on Rapper for Chance the Rapper last year, and you know the timeline was super tight. And you know certain engineers were like, "Hey, we can get this done in this time frame." Others were saying, you know, different time frames, but like, you know, Ben one Saturday night just like sat down and like worked on a prototype, and it was like done the next morning. And so like, you know, I think that honestly it probably landed us a project, just being able to present a prototype that quickly. When you run an agency, like, I mean, you're competing with other agencies for sure, and you're competing on a lot of factors: service, time, cost, things like that. But I think we're going to start seeing more of these groups, including consultants, just like start to adopt the technologies because it just works better for you.
Awesome. All right. And then the last group here. So this is more of like a catch-all for some of the stuff we didn't quite get to. Maybe this stuff is further down the line. And some of it's top of mind, but definitely I think stuff we're all really passionate about. So what is this going to mean for, you know, our personal lives? What is this going to mean for kids and how they get educated potentially? And then finally, what is this going to mean for economic disparity?
Yeah, this is the one I'm probably the most passionate about, because I am a mother. And so I think about, you know, as technology is changing, you know, I wish that I had started learning to code when I was very young, because it's such a great skill to have. And so I think that for children learning how to start using this, you know, using the method of building blocks. That's how I explain it to my daughter. She understands what blocks are, and that when you stack them, you build them. And so, you know, using those kind of things to allow them to start thinking creatively. And then, you know, using that in my own personal life is, I love that if I get an idea, I can quickly spin something up and start playing with it and start validating, even just to myself, would this work? Would this be a good solution? You know, could I save this later if I had a client that needed this or something like that? And, you know, that's really helpful to feel empowered in that way. And then with economic disparity is probably the biggest one to me, and the biggest driver for me personally, why I'm in this space, why it matters so much to me, is because it allows people to do something that otherwise they would not have the opportunity to do. Going to, you know, getting a computer science degree is expensive. Going to coding boot camps is expensive. Learning to code, even, you know, if you go through, can be a long process, and that assumes that you have access to a lot of platforms. And I think that this allows people to start with an idea that, you know, I think our community members are going to be, you know, tomorrow's developers, because they are able to see that the problems that exist in their community, they can become problem solvers, and they can then start making a difference. And that to me is the biggest thing, is that people have control to not only just go be founders. And, you know, I think it's more than just being a founder of the next tech company or the next product. I think what it means is that you have the power and the ability to impact positive change within your community and within yourself. And that's the thing. I know I'm going to have to cut myself off because I'll just keep talking about this. I'm so passionate about it. But it has such a profound effect on people. It can. And that's the one thing, you know, I know we as a team are really wanting to push forward.
Yeah, what does it mean for our personal lives? I mean, listen, I have Zap set up to do things for myself, so I have to do, like, why do a task over and over and over again and waste my time? You know what I mean? Like, if every week I got to create that slideshow, let's automate it. Like, I got to create that deck, let's automate it. But every week I've got to do A/B. Like, why am I doing if I can set up a no code flow to do it, why am I doing it myself? And I think if this, then that really got it started on the personal level. But I think more people will start to pick up some of these tools like Zapier and do some things. And I'm excited about that. And I think that it will start flowing over into kids' lives. I mean, I'm already low key trying to get my kids to forget about certain things and like learn to build products and valuable things, learn to solve problems with these tools and figure out, how you can have an impact. I just think that's so important. I think that there's a lot of room for schools to really get involved in this space and to have, I would give anything to be a high school senior right now and to be coming out knowing that like I could build a full-on website or a web app with, these tools and not even have to know how to code. Like the power that's there is pretty incredible. And it's just, what are we going to do to put it in people's hands, in kids' hands? But I think it makes a big deal. But as far as economic disparity, I think that's the biggest one, and the one that I also am most passionate about. As a white male, I am super privileged. I know that I've got a lot of opportunities that just because I look like me, and it's not fair. And I love hearing the stories from people who are out doing incredible things because they got access to a tool and they couldn't do it before. Like those are stories that I live on. We hear them in customer support at Webflow all the time. I mean, Harry Stebbings tweeted just the other day about how he just got out of an Uber and his driver was making 95% less money than pre-COVID. Yeah. So in 4 weeks, she learned Webflow, and she's now making websites for personal trainers. She makes 2 times more than she did driving. Like those stories, like that's what it's about, right? Like that's the whole point of this, is that you can do it. You don't have to be some sort of developer expert, whatever. If you're willing to just spend a little bit of time learning a tool, you can absolutely change your stars and do whatever you want. And I think getting people in that spot and providing that opportunity to people is what it's all about. It's about giving people control and letting them have a chance to breathe and to share their ideas, because there's so many great ideas out there that we're not hearing or seeing or getting the impact of because, they don't think they can. And I think the more we can expose people to this, I preach it to everybody I meet. They're probably ready for me to shut up, but like, I'm excited about the opportunities it provides for people.
Yeah, no, I think both of them really actually just hit on every point there. I agree with Ben. Like, I think for personal use, like to me, no code tools, Zapier, Webflow, they just give me my time back. And so I can actually take, days off instead of having to work, 7 days a week or things like that, because, it abstracts a lot of that hard work away for me. So that's really nice. For kids, I think it's cool because we'll start to see more and more folks. I feel like when coding is introduced to kids, like they're playing around, I forget what it's called. I think it's called sprites or something like that. The building blocks of, essentially drag and drop of code. And I think it's taught by, I can't remember who. Anyways, it's like a drag and drop builder that will allow you to build a game or like a little animation. Scratch. Yeah. That's what it's called, by MIT.
Code.org too.
Yep. So like, I think that's cool. And I think we'll still see that in the future, but I think we'll also start to see, kids that are really entrepreneurial, go forward and start actually building cool products that other people could use. Like, let's be honest, like a lot of these kids coming up are way smarter than like I ever will be. I've got a little cousin that has literally been coding in Python since he was like 6 or 7 years old. And I'm just like, I don't know how to catch up to you. Like you're light years ahead of me already. And so I think kids will start to get into no code. And we'll start to see that a little bit more. For economic disparity, I think both of them really hit that one home. I'm super excited about it because I think it bridges the gap between communities that really can't have access to software and being able to build products or startups by themselves. I think now they'll be able to do it, and it's accessible and it's available to them. So I'm super pumped about that.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's see. I know we're running a little short on time for you, Matt. So we'll try to rapid fire through these next set of predictions. Feel free to, if you feel really passionate, give an explanation. If not, just like a month or year prediction will be awesome for this. All right. Okay. So first up, when do you think it'll be as common to make an app as it is to make a PowerPoint presentation?
I have a hot take.
All right.
I hope that we're not building apps in place of PowerPoint presentations. I think let's not.
I wasn't trying to say we were making them in place of. I just mean like it seems.
Oh,
yeah,
gotcha.
yeah. I just mean like it seems
hot
as
take retracted.
Okay, sorry. No. It seems those still like PowerPoints should still exist. Slide decks are fine. I just meant like today, like we make presentations all the time in business or in class and schools, right? It's like everyone knows how to make one. So like, when do we think it'll be as popular to make a simple app?
I think, gosh, we're probably a year away, I think.
Okay.
2 years.
2.5, 3 years.
All right. Next up, when will a lot of colleges start offering like no code classes? Obviously, we know it's already starting to trickle in there today, but when will you think when will it be like, oh, that's cool, but when will it be like, oh, that's like a little more normal?
Yeah, I think we're looking at probably 5 years, if not longer. They could do it sooner. They can license our visual dev school content if they would like. But
nice plug.
Sorry, I had to throw it in there. But I mean, I think we're still at a solid 5 years away from that. If
Oh, she went laggy on me. Did she go laggy on anybody else?
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. I would say, like, if it were me, I would say, I know that there are a ton of colleges already teaching the tools. It's just, are we talking about when are they going to start teaching how to stitch them together? I don't know. Like, is that kind of what we're thinking? Because I feel like some of the tools are already being taught.
I guess, yeah, I just meant like more of like the tools themselves.
Now, I think it's already happening.
All right.
I think that we will not see. I think the top tier of colleges will start to teach it probably within the next 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
I think most colleges, though. No. Look. I think most colleges are so far behind in curriculum. I think what's more likely to happen is in the next 6 months to like year, these college extracurricular activities, those groups will start to adopt no code, like engineering club and things like that. I think they will start to see it more often and actually dig in. But colleges are so slow. Like, I mean, a few years ago, like I was in a marketing class and they're still teaching billboard advertising over there instead of like Facebook or anything digital. So it's like, I just think colleges are so slow to adopt. I
personally know there are hundreds of universities that are teaching Webflow right now. UCLA, like big places that teach it. Like it's happening now.
But
all right.
We'll see.
You're gonna have to break
come
them
back.
up.
We'll come back to that one. All right, we'll break it up. All right, what about more products launched on Product Hunt that are built with no-code tools than ones that are built with traditional coding?
I'm gonna say 12 to 18 months.
I go 2 years.
Yeah, same. I'm 2 years.
Okay, awesome. Next up, this is a little bit of a hot take one. When do you think no code will meet low code in terms of functionality? Lacey?
That's a great question.
That is a good question. I don't know. I mean, I feel like you should answer that. You're the co-founder of a no-code platform.
When are you going to put it back on me?
You're not going to get there. I'm thinking more 18 to 24 months. I'm just giving myself some room.
All right.
3 years.
I hope sooner. But
Yeah, probably 3 or 4 years. I think it's just hard to build a no-code app for everyone. I feel like a lot of people just have very specific needs, and busting out a little bit of JavaScript can just get the job done. So that's what I'm banking on in the short term. But I would say, yeah, 3 to 4 years.
All right, next up, when do you think we'll see a product at the level of popularity in users of, like, let's say a Trello or a TurboTax or HelloSign that's built completely with no code? And I guess this is like a little skewed to being more of like a software product and less of like a website, because you could already say like, well, there's no code like e-commerce or, websites that are all built with no code. So like it's a little more skewed towards like your app side of things here, just to clarify.
yeah, I think 3 years.
I think it goes hand in hand with the last question. I think it's about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay, and then what about one of those actually IPOing?
To me, that's like
Oh, goodness.
7 years.
Yeah,
7 to 10. I think it'll be a while.
I was going to say 6. Yeah.
IPO is
I'm
a
gonna go
big
6.
deal.
I'm gonna go hot take here. I think in the next 2 to 3 years you can see it.
All right. I love it. I love it. All right, next up, when do you think there'll be more freelancers and agencies that use no-code tools that don't?
If we're lumping them all together, I think probably within the next 2 years.
Whoa.
That's a hot take.
I love it though.
Well,
I like it.
if they're implementing them on some level, I think.
Yeah, just some level. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily saying like that's the only thing they do. It's
Gotcha.
just that they use them.
I say 5 to 6. No, maybe less. I would say 3 years. If we're just talking about using them in your workflow, yeah, 3 years or less.
Yeah, I mean, I would put it closer to 7 years probably when you talk about most, but I could be wrong.
All right. Last one, the one that I'm like most excited about. When do you think we'll have global leaders start talking about no code?
How smart is our president in this question? Just kidding.
There are more than one president. There's more than I was saying all global leaders.
General global leaders.
We're not trying to bring politics too much into this. I'm just saying general global leaders.
Let's say 5 years.
Yeah, I'm going to say 5 to 7, unless I think all it takes is one thing shifting, one product coming out that, I probably 5 years, 3, I don't know.
In the next year.
Oh, all right. Hot take. I like it. Okay. I know we're running pretty sure on time, so I'll let you go first, Matt. So what is maybe the most interesting thing that you've either seen built on no code, or what's like a really inspiring story that kind of keeps you going with the whole no code revolution?
Sure. This one is very selfish of a story, but it is what got me motivated to get into it. When I was, again, going back to Ben and I having coffee, I was working on a web app that we still have today. And I had been working for months and months on getting auth going and getting the front end going and all of that. And, I had a bug in Ben on just that day that we met up. He was just like, hey, you could do this in no code. And you wouldn't have any of these issues. And I was like, all right, guy, yeah, sure. And he literally went and built it I think the next day or something like that really quickly. And he came back to me and he did my 3 months of dev work or whatever in that day. And so I think that got me sold on no code. And so I guess that to me, that's the most interesting thing, but that's selfish. I think I think the things that other people should be interested in, I think job are very valuable. They're simple, but they have high profit margins. I think anyone, if you're able to get the strategy right, I think you could do really well there.
Awesome. I know you got to jump off, so I'll let you go. Thanks. Thank you so much.
Go ahead, Lacey.
Gosh, I don't know. Probably one of the best stories is something that I've seen just in working with some clients is trying to help them. They're a very small company. They run a very, very impactful business, and helping them use no code tools to get some of the workload off of their developers so that they can run reports, automation, those sort of things that they really need to keep going. But it was eating up their development time. And so by them being able to do that, they're not only saving money, but they're also able to form. And so that for me is really inspiring, and something that I love hearing about is that it helps them move quicker and more efficiently. And it gave, their developer time to work on the important work instead of kind of the grind doing, these automated repetitive tasks.
It's a great question. I don't know. For me, I see there was a site built with Webflow it's helped gather tens of thousands of dollars of donations for different causes. There's been a lot of COVID relief stuff. It's the story that Harry shared. I saw someone built an Adalo app that does subscription management. Like my mind, like all of those stories, like when you see people who are building these incredible things, I think it's those pieces that really, I don't know, that blow me away. Those are the things that come to mind. It's those stories where people are really, and once again, it's kind of, they're changing their stars. They're completely, like, their career was headed one direction, and then they found no code and built this, and now it's they run a software company, or they run this agency, a freelance agency, or they're doing this thing and they're doing really impactful work, and it's changing their economic situation, or they're using the tools to help people and to make an impact in their community. It's those things that I think that really hit me the most. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. It's amazing to get all the different perspectives, to see where we all agree and disagree. And you guys are definitely, big leaders in the space. So please keep everything going with visual dev. I can't wait to see, where that wall will take you all, and help us, to your last point, really inspire more people. The more people we get involved, the better these stories will get, the more creative things that will happen. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Bye.